Hey everybody, it's Tracy, and I wanted to touch base on Ireland as you see a lot of major crypto exchanges getting a VASP license there, and wanted to walk through the process and talk about the advantages, disadvantages of getting the license there. And it's relatively new. So the first VASP license wasn't issued until 2022. And the process is similar to what you see in, different areas of the EU, but with different emphasis on different things. So, outside of the standard sort of business plan, what you tailor to do, extensive KYC, AML type documentation, there's a big emphasis on what they call fitness and probity, which relates to controlled functions, meaning CFs. So individuals that will have access or dominion over imperative elements as far as like customer funds, monitoring trading, monitoring AML, KYC, things like that becomes very important. And in most cases, especially if you are based outside of Ireland, you need to travel to Ireland for a sit-down interview to discuss that with the Central Bank of Ireland, who's the governing regulator. And there are exemptions, like you can conceivably avoid that, but that's one impediment. Not that it's terribly difficult to travel there, but it is something that they take more serious than what you'd see in like a Lithuania or Estonia, so on and so forth. Contrasting that is the capital requirements along with the ongoing costs of even applying. So the capital requirement starts at 25,000 euro. It can be increased based on the regulator's desire or requirement. But I think you can assuage that sort of need for it to be higher by, sort of presenting the platform as having more of a startup feel, a startup aspect where it's going to grow organically. If you are an established player coming in, obviously the capital requirement is going to be higher, but at the same time, you can probably meet that capital requirement with greater ease. But for just sort of a rank and file, we're starting here, 25,000 euro is basically the start. And along those lines, the application fee is like 50 euro. It's crazy, right? So it's really actually quite inexpensive, all things being told. The process itself, you see a lot of different things online. The actual Central Bank of Ireland will say 8 months. A lot of providers will say 3. In my experience, it's more like four and a half months to get the license, assuming you have your act together and get everything to them and are responsive and things like that. And, the big thing, which is, I guess, unique, is that you go into the process with a delineation of what you intend to do, like what you intend to offer, right? A crypto exchange with, custody, self-custody, whatever the case may be. But the decision of the central bank, which to date, roughly 80% of all applicants have been successful, is, in most cases, the failure to issue the license has come down to decisions on fitness and probity, right? Meaning like your ability to run, your team's ability to run the exchange or whatever you're doing, or if you had criminal issues, whatever the case may be. But the big issue is you are granted the license, but it's not always for what you asked for. So at the end of the process, let's say you had a host of different functionalities, hosting wallets, trading engine, peer-to-peer, all these things. The central bank has the ability to come back and say, okay, well, you have been granted the right to run a peer-to-peer trading engine-based centralized exchange, but nothing else, right? And so maybe the business plan and maybe the overall selling point sort of encapsulated these other elements, hosting wallets, whatever the case may be, and you have this provisional appeal right, if you want to call it that, to subsequently go back and say, okay, we were granted for this, and within 21 days, you file basically like an objection that says the reasons that we would like to add these additional products and services is for the following reasons. And so therefore, that kind of sets off this secondary process, which can take a couple of months to sort of resolve itself out. But nevertheless, whatever you were approved for, you can go into business on day one. It's just, if you're not approved for the full spectrum of services that you've sort of applied for, then you have to launch into this secondary kind of appeal-like process, which, is the success rate I couldn't tell you, right? Because it's not as well publicized, but it's fairly reasonable. And I think, you find with the regulators at the central bank that they tend to be more keen and like understanding of, sort of the ecosystem, the blockchain ecosystem, and just the realities of, the financial realities of things like running a crypto exchange. So I don't think it's a death knell. I don't think it's a fool's errand to, pursue like this appeal process if it was necessary. It's just something to be wary of when you get into the process. But overall, it's a pretty good license to get. And I think that bears itself out when you see the larger players in the industry following suit and getting the licenses there, even when they really don't need to, because they've got licenses in other jurisdictions in the EU. So it's interesting. And I think, from the perspective of what other FIs can I get as a crypto exchange or, a payment rail, whatever the case may be, Ireland makes it quite easy, right? And even comparing it to the UK, it's really a much better license with an easier process and the ability to connect to different, regulated payment rail providers like debit, SWIFT, SEPA, what have you, right, through an EMI or whatever the case may be, is actually much easier, right, than what you see even in the UK. So, and then obviously the fact that Ireland's EU makes it even better. So that's my take. I think it's definitely worth, if you're looking for something EU-based, it's definitely worth the investment and like at least the investigation, because there's a lot to it that I think people are just now finding out, right? So if you have any questions, definitely hit me up, adam@adamtracy.io. Definitely, if you like this video, subscribe, more coming, and I'll talk to you later. Cheers.